they always said that this special military operation was about the Donbass. It was about Luhansk, Donetsk, it was about Zaporizhia and Kherson, as well as Crimea. The key towns are towns like Pokrovsk, and then there are the three main towns just to the northwest of there. It seems like that is what the focus for Russia is. The trouble is, taking towns is incredibly costly and it takes a lot of time. It's taken well over a year for Russia to make advances into Pokrovsk. I don't know what the situation is on the ground, but it's evident that Russia is still making progress. If it does make progress in that particular area, it's going to make life very difficult in Myronrad, I think it is, just to the northeast. And then, of course, there's the Kostiantynivka and the other towns to the north. But many Western observers believe that it will take years for President Putin to take those. And I think the appetite of the West to try to step up support for Ukraine will need to actually think long and hard to stop this becoming another 3 years of war.
Yes. But how could the situation in Pokrovsk, change the overall course of the war and possibly all this negotiation process?
Well, if you're looking at tactically, Pokrovsk is on a rail hub and it's on a road hub, so it makes life more difficult for some of the other settlements around it. And therefore, if I was an army commander, it's a very key target. But the challenge is it's a tactical game. It's not breaking through, which is what Russia would have expected to do. Let's face it, Russia is a much bigger country. It has far more resources available. It's got its country on a war footing. It's got many more people to commit to the fight, and yet still it is only making very, very slow progress. But the fact is, it is making progress. And I think what's happening in the West at the moment is this stark realization that despite the fact there's a lot of support gone to Ukraine, whether it's weapons, whether it's tanks, whether it's fighter jets, whether it's money, but it's not enough. And despite all that support, Ukraine is still slowly losing. And the challenge, I think, for the West is there are other things that the West could do, not least of which longer range missiles, also establishing no-fly zones, and also putting pressure on both economically, but also militarily on to President Putin. All of those things would increase the pressure on Putin. It might not stop the war, but my goodness, would it make life a lot more difficult for Putin to continue it.
Oh, Sean, you're definitely helping people to stay realistic. Your, answers like a cold shower, to be honest. Okay, but I was reading a few weeks ago that several military analysts suggested that Putin was losing control over the war and might look for a temporary truce. Have you seen any signs of that inside Kremlin?
No, I think, there's been a couple of things recently, like Lavrov has fallen out of favor or apparently fallen out of favor. One of the signs from the West, and as a student of military history, a lot of dictators, their power base isn't the people, it's the oligarchs around them, it's the people who have the money, who used to be able to enjoy the fruits of their wealth in Europe, now cannot do so, and eventually their patience runs out. But returning to your earlier theme, I take no pleasure in trying to paint the picture as I see it in Ukraine. But what I do try to do, one of the reasons I come out regularly and try to support, particularly the Ukrainian Air Force, try and save lives, improve morale and do our bit to help, is that we are brothers in arms, that it is a very difficult time for Ukraine. I think all of us feel a great deal of sympathy. There are lots of Ukrainian families who settled in the UK to try to keep away from the war, and we're trying to do our best to help it. We have a lot of problems in this country, but we are still providing a lot of money and support to Ukraine. And my efforts in this side, a tiny part, but it's all part of trying to step up support for Ukraine. If Ukraine was winning, I suspect the West would be a lot less interested in providing support.
Okay, how would you describe the moment when you would realize that Ukraine is winning? What will be or what could be the turning point?
For me, the best opportunity at the moment is if Tomahawk missiles were able to be provided to Ukraine, if Russia's energy infrastructure, not just that near the Ukrainian border, but deep inside Russia was targeted, that would have a huge impact on Russia's ability to fund the war. It would also provide fuel shortages for Russians. That would make life more difficult for them as well. And I think then you might see an effort for President Putin to start to sue for some form of peace. I think there will remain lots of challenges, though, not least of which President Putin probably will want to pause for a few years and then come again. And therefore, how does Ukraine secure long-term security guarantees from the West? Is that NATO? That doesn't look likely with the current American administration, but are there other ways in which the West could guarantee security? And I don't mean just a signature on a bit of paper, because obviously back in 1994, that didn't work, and therefore there'll need to be something rather more substantial than the Budapest Memo of 1994.
Yeah, well, what about all those people, analysts and politicians, that were saying that Ukrainians were super naive when they were hoping that the United States will give us Tomahawks? I saw that and I heard that many times.
The danger is, once we start talking about President Trump, I find it very difficult to work out what his strategy is, whether in fact there is a strategy or whether it's simply a reaction. I think the West saw that President Putin was deliberately messing the American president around, but for some reason, the American president still is trying to find a peaceful way to end the war and seems to believe that President Putin is ready for that. I don't think there's anybody else in the Western world who is, but Tomahawk missiles would have been a major blow for Russia, and that's probably why President Putin spent 2.5 hours on the phone to President Trump trying to talk him out of providing those weapons. But the harsh reality, in answering your question, traditionally Western leaders have thought strategically. At the moment, it appears that the American president is thinking more tactically. So it's quite difficult to predict what he's going to do next.